So welcome everyone to the first Abolish Anti-Conversion and Apostasy Penalties Coalition side event, Free to Choose. We chose this topic because obviously whenever we talk about religious freedom, people have the right to choose, and it's an individualized right. And that's something we as a coalition endorse. The coalition that has sponsored this event include Jubilee Campaign. I'm Ann Bawalda, the executive director of Jubilee Campaign. Set My People Free. Later we will hear from Kamal Fahmi, who's the head of, has been the founder of Set My People Free. Christian Freedom International, Wendy Wright is here representing Christian Freedom International, St. Charles Institute, and the Religious Liberty Partnership. Some of you may be aware that the Religious Liberty Partnership is a coalition of 50 or so members, of organizational members, and then we also have experts that assist the Religious Liberty Partnership. So this coalition is focused on abolishing anti-conversion and apostasy penalties. Today's speakers will include those who have survived punishments that they should never have suffered, as well as those who are experts in certain regions of the world where these laws exist. So we like to give a special welcome to those here today attending in person, but also our virtual guests. We are streaming this through Zoom, and we are thankful that everyone who has come to attend. So as we know, the UN Declaration on Human Rights, Article 18, protects the right to the freedom of one's choice, the freedom to worship, etc. However, there are over 20 countries in the world, in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, which criminalize apostasy. Apostasy is leaving one's religion of birth, and also criminalizing conversion, changing one's faith. And we believe as a coalition, and it's obviously recognized by international conventions, that these laws are illegitimate. They infringe upon the individual's human rights, and we oppose them, and we are hopeful that other countries will recognize the right of people to choose their own faith. So our witnesses today will start with Marziyeh Amirizadeh. She is a survivor of the apostasy laws in Iran. And Mariam, we would love to start off with hearing your testimony today and how you managed to cope in the country of Iran, both as someone who's changed their faith, as well as somebody who spent significant time in prison. Marziyeh, would you share with us today?
Sure. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the Arab Summit's officials for holding this event. Thank you. To raise the voices of victims of religious persecution and to call for the global repeal of the death penalty and blasphemy laws. My name is Marziyeh Amirizadeh. I grew up in Iran, a nation whose radical Islamic government has a terrible record of suppressing human rights, including the routine persecution of religious minorities. Despite this persecution, I became a Christian more than 20 years ago. In 2009, my friend Mariam, who is not here, and I got arrested because of our faith in Jesus. We were sentenced to execution by hanging for charges of apostasy, blasphemy, and promoting Christianity in Iran. We spent 259 days in prison. The government authorities constantly threatened us and put pressure on us to renounce our faith in Jesus. After our arrest, we spent the first 14 days in the most horrible jail where we could not see the light. We didn't have fresh water to drink, and we were forced to sleep on a cold concrete floor. In a desperate attempt to stay warm, we covered ourselves with blankets that were soaked in urine. The guards treated us like animals, and by putting food in a dirty pot and throwing it in front of us without any plates or spoons. We refused to eat for days. After 14 days, they transferred us to Evin prison, a prison that is notorious for torturing, raping, and killing many innocent people. Inside Evin prison, we were discriminated against by the guards only because we were Christians. For instance, they didn't allow us to use the library, attend classes, or participate in any activities simply because of our faith in Jesus. They refused to give us medications when we were sick. The guards and radical Muslims called us dirty Christians for months. We were forced to participate in Islamic prayers and didn't have access to the Bible. While in prison, we witnessed many injustices and human rights violations, such as the guards physically abusing and beating prisoners, the persecution and imprisonment of other religious minorities, and the torture and execution of innocent young women. But the mental torture was often more difficult than the physical torture. For instance, they separated us and sent me to the ward which housed all the murderers. They put me in a cell, and after a week, they took one of my cellmates and executed her in order to show me what will be the cost of our resistance. Later, just before our last court appearance, they executed our best and closest friend, Shirin Alamhouli, who was a Kurdish political prisoner fighting against the criminal regime in Iran. We shared some of those stories in our book, Captive in Iran. Moreover, they sent us to solitary cells in another building for 40 days. In that building, every day we could hear the voice and cries of other prisoners who were being tortured. We were kept in cells that we could barely move around in with a light on for 24 hours. We endured long hours of interrogations while blindfolded. We had no contacts with our families for months and could not have a lawyer for 6 months. It was Jesus and his love and presence that helped us to remain faithful to the end. It was Jesus who was protecting us, giving us the strength to endure those difficult situations. Finally, after almost 9 months of interrogations, with the power of God, and because of the support and the advocacy of many Christian and human rights organizations, we got released. However, we were warned by the government that we could not live safely in Iran as Christians anymore. Therefore, we were forced to leave the country. The persecution of Christian minorities has increased in the past few years. Even those Christians who are not in prison or have no activities have to hide their faiths. Otherwise, they will risk their lives and lose their public benefits, such as losing their jobs or their right to education. All churches that held services in Farsi, Iran's official language, have been closed and their leaders arrested. Members of historical churches like Armenians and Assyrians only have limited freedom and are under constant surveillance by the government's intelligence agencies. They are treated as second-class citizens and are forbidden from ministering to people from Muslim background and from preaching the gospel in Farsi. Since our case in 2009, the Islamic Republic regime in Iran has changed its tactic because of the international pressures. They rarely charge religious minorities with apostasy to avoid international pressures. Instead, hundreds of Christians and other faiths have been arrested by the Iranian authorities and charged with disrupting national security for being a Christian and participating in home churches, and would receive prison sentences of between 2 to 15 years. They also convict some of them of spying for or cooperating with hostile states, especially the United States and Israel, in order to sentence them to death by hanging. The United States, as a world power, can play a major role in asking the international communities such as the UN and other European countries to hold the Iranian regime, a member state of the UN that has subscribed to Universal Declaration of Human Rights, accountable for violations of human rights, including the rights of religious minorities. We need a global call to action, and the international community must stand up for human rights values all around the world. I, as a US citizen and someone who has been experienced the persecution and witnessed firsthand the brutality of the Islamic Republic regime in Iran, urge the US government politicians not only to repeal the death penalty for apostasy and blasphemy laws, both in practice and in law, but also to make accountable the violators of human rights in Iran. This is what America should stand for. This is what American heroes paid the price and lost their lives to defend and expand democracy all around the world throughout the history. This is what made America the greatest nation in the world. The Iranian people will never forget those who stood with them and those who betrayed them. History will judge you. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you, Marziyeh, for that very compelling story. It's very difficult to listen to how you suffered for your faith, and yet you stood strong through it, and now you're speaking out. I can't agree with you enough. Iran needs to not only change its tactics, but it needs to abolish its apostasy law. And I agree with your call to the international community to pressurize Iran to do that. Our next speaker likewise suffered extraordinary imprisonment, even giving birth to her second child while imprisoned for her faith. Our second speaker is Mariam Ibraheem from Sudan, and she'll be telling us what she endured because she chose a faith tradition other than the one she was told she had to follow.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Matt. This is very powerful statement. Thank you. Sorry for what you have gone through. So, my name is Mariam Ibraheem. I was born in Sudan for a Muslim and father and Christian mother. My story is quite a bit familiar for most of you here in this room. And my mom was flew war in Ethiopia when she was 10 years old. It's only one of her siblings, sister. And she settled in a refugees camp in Sudan, city of Bidarif. She met my father in the refugees camp and they got married when she was 16. She gave birth to me when she was 17. So we are 3 siblings. Unfortunately, things didn't work between my parents because my father was very abusive, and he have a problem with my mom going out and working and refusing to convert to Islam because he thought it'd be easy for her to be a Muslim and cover her face. So, and she was beautiful. So this is also something he doesn't like her to be out and this working in the market. So when I was 7 years old, they got divorced, and then later we heard that my father passed away. So we moved to a bigger city, which is very challenging time for us. My mom was a single mom and she's a foreigner. She's always been called just foreigner. They don't even sometimes call her name. So she was only identified by the foreigner woman. So we faced so many challenges because all the community inside are very staunch Muslim community. So I was forced to wear al hijab to cover my hair. to wear 13 clothing. My mom was forced also to do the practice of female genital mutilation on us, me and my little sister. So we grew up in that situation, you know, facing discrimination every day. We see that, but all the Christians just used to the situation. So we don't have other chance than just to bow our head and say, okay, we studied Islamic study all through the school year. You have to memorize Quran, you have to study Sunnah and Fiqh, the 3 subjects on the school since pre-K, all through the high school and even some plus in universities. So we did that. And then when the pressures become too hard for my mom, we moved to the biggest city, the capital of Gaddafi. So we thought things would be better, but my brother, my youngest brother, has faced so much challenges also. And he had to drop out of the school and was forced by some of the elders in our neighborhood to go to Quranic school. It's called Al-Khalwa, where the student will practice, memorize Quran and become like imams and things like that. So my mom was always in an argument with the elder in the city, and I was too. So it was very challenging time. So, and he ended up abandoning the family. So, and chose to be on the Quranic side, Quranic school. So when I was 17, I was able to continue my education through help from one of the Catholic priests. I was moved to Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. And I spent most of the time volunteering and working with the church, with the Little Sister of the Poor and Saint Mansour, some of the charities group on our church, in the Catholic Church. So it's very hard. We face persecution almost every day and discrimination. We see that. So you can we don't have holidays during like the Christmas. We go to Christmas mass after the school or after work. We don't have access to religious education at the schools, and which is still happening right now, even with some changes in Sudan. So, and this is a story of almost most of the Islamic countries. Like this is how Christians are treated, like second citizen. And then the other thing also, the way they look at the girls, even for Muslim women, like at the end of my story, that's what I came to understand, because I always have a problem like arguing on debating things like religion. So my mom don't like that. So I end up being like kept on with the sisters most of the time. Like, you know, my mom always trying to protect me, not to get involved in any religious debate with others, even at the school. So after my mom was passed away, in my last school, my last year in college. So this is here what the challenge starts. So some of my father's family start coming after, and I got married also at that time. So some of my father's family start coming after me, and what the first thing they did is for me to be practicing Christianity. So, and with the law on the country and the government support their word, I'm not supposed to be a Christian, and I'm not supposed to practice Christian faith and not to marry to a Christian man. So they see me, I'm living a wrong life. So they send me to jail, and all during the trial is like almost every 2 weeks, start from September of 2013 to Christmas Eve 2013. That's when the judge decide to send me to prison, to federal prison, woman federal prison. Because all during the trial, just say a shahada and leave. So I end up spending during I was pregnant at that time and spent most of my pregnancy time in prison with my first child also, my son Martin. So, well, my story is actually explaining how women and girls are religious minority are treated, because this is something even me, I don't know. When I questioned the judge, I asked him why I'm supposed to be Muslim. He said, because you're a girl. And why I'm not supposed to marry a different person? If I'm a Muslim girl, why I'm not supposed to marry Christian? He said, because women are weak. So in Islam, they see women are weak. So if you are a woman and married somebody from different religion, they're gonna force you to convert, because women follow their husbands. So with something I don't like. So sometimes when I get in conversation like that with the judge, I end up being punished by my hand to be changed to my back. Even I'm pregnant and I have to take care of my son. So they changed my hand on the back for 3 days, just because they ask question and I ask the judge or I respond to the judge. So it was very challenging and it's very hard experience, but I'm grateful for the advocacy work and the prayer for many of you here in this room, and include you, Anne. And I hope this will continue, and the laws that are really are not right, treating people unjustly, to be changed, including family law in Sudan and personal status law, which is still not being changed. So I'm hoping to see that happening and I'm praying for that. Thank you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariam. For those who aren't aware, she'd given more of her testimony earlier during the conference, but we're so grateful you're here to illustrate for us what is happening with the family law and personal status laws in the Sudan, because there are many ways that individuals who choose a faith other than that which they were born with are suffering. And you clearly had a lifetime, in addition to the imprisonment time, but a lifetime of suffering. Our next two speakers will actually be, they were pre-recorded for us. And so our next speaker is Cheick Mkhaitir. He is originally from Mauritania, and he opposed the caste system in Mauritania. There's also a religious component to the fact that he no longer was following Islam. So Cheick Mkhaitir provided for us a video in which, I'm sorry, yeah. It's live. And, he's here with us. I apologize. So please, please, we look forward to hearing from you. He is speaking in Arabic and we'll have an interpreter.
شكرا جزيلا لكم على إعطائي هذه الفرصة. اسمي الشيخ محمد من موريتانيا.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this event to speak about me and Mauritania.
كنت في موريتانيا ناشط حقوقي ضد العبودية والظلم الاجتماعي ومطالب بدولة علمانية. كان هذا في عام 2013.
When I was in Mauritania in 2013, I was very active against slavery and against other laws in Mauritania.
في نهاية العام 2013 كتبت مقالة عن العبودية في موريتانيا وعلاقتها بالدين الإسلامي.
In 2013, I wrote an article or a blog in which I condemned the relation between slavery and the state.
وعلى إثر هذه المقالة تم اعتقالي وإدخالي إلى السجن.
After writing this blog or this article, I was arrested and imprisoned.
حيث تمت محاكمتي وحكم علي بالإعدام بتهمة الردة عن الدين الإسلامي.
They sentenced me to death in the charges of working against Islam.
وبعد هذا قمت باستئناف هذا الحكم، لكن محكمة الاستئناف أكدت الحكم بالإعدام أيضا في حقي.
I tried to appeal this sentence, but even the Court of Appeal approved the sentence that was made earlier and confirmed the death sentence.
بقيت في السجن لمدة 6 سنوات، وفي نهاية العام 2019 بعد عدة ضغوطات من عدة منظمات تمكنت من الخروج من موريتانيا، وأنا الآن متواجد في فرنسا.
I was imprisoned for 6 years, but due to some pressure by human rights organizations, I was released and I left the country to France, where I live right now.
أريد هنا أن نتحدث عن واقع الحريات الدينية، وخصوصا هذه التهمة الخطيرة جدا التي توجه إلى الكثير من الأشخاص المسماة بتهمة الردة.
We are talking now about the freedom of religion, which touches upon the life of many, and there is much to say about it.
حيث أنه في موريتانيا تم تعديل القانون الجنائي في موريتانيا ليصبح شد قسوة ويأمر بقتل المرتد وقتل أي شخص يتحدث عن الإسلام بأي طريقة مهما كانت.
In Mauritania, they have amended the criminal law or the penal code, and they have made it much severe to punish a person that have left Islam or that is accused of apostasy or heresy, so that the penalty for such crimes have become much worse than before.
الأمر هنا لا يتعلق بموريتانيا فقط، وإنما في كافة الدول الجوار المحيطة بها مثل المغرب والجزائر وليبيا وغيرها.
And this doesn't only include Mauritania, and we are not only signaling Mauritania here, but it also includes the countries around Mauritania like Algeria, Morocco, and Libya.
حيث أنه منذ يومين فقط تلقيت عدة اتصالات من بعض الأشخاص، وخاصة أشخاص عالقين على الحدود الليبية هاربين من السجون بعد أن تم إطلاق بعد أن خرجوا منها.
Just 2 days ago, I received I had some contact with some people that have been imprisoned for long time, but they have left the prison and now they are stranded in the borders in Libya, and they don't know what to do.
أحدهم قضى في السجن 1 سنة و2 وتم تعذيبه وتم اغتصابه.
One of them has been imprisoned for 1 year and 2 months, in which he has been tortured and even he has been abused, sexually abused.
والسبب هو اتهامه باعتناق الديانة المسيحية.
And the reason for sentencing him or imprisoning him was that he converted to Christianity.
حالة هذا الشخص تشبه حالات كثيرة موجودة في هذه المنطقة، وأعتقد أنه يجب التحرك على الأقل لإنقاذ الذين تمكنوا من الهرب ولإنقاذ الباقين من خلال الضغط من أجل تغيير القوانين.
This is the situation like this man are many, and there are many similar situations that include people that have been tortured and abused and mistreated by different countries.
أريد أن أذكر أن موريتانيا في هذا العام سيتم استدعاء هذا أمام الأمم المتحدة للحديث أمام اللجنة الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان لدى الأمم المتحدة، ولا أعرف الحقيقة ما الذي ستقدمه موريتانيا في هذا الإطار، ولكن بشكل عام أطالب الجميع بالتحرك من أجل تحسين القوانين الموريتانية لأنها أصبحت قوانين قاتلة حقا.
He said that Mauritania, a representative of Mauritania, will be invited to the UN to speak before the council there about the situation in Mauritania and the human rights in Mauritania.
وهنا أذكر بحضور هذا الشخص لأن حضوره والضغط عليه والضغط على موريتانيا من خلال كافة المنصات الدولية هو السبيل الوحيد من أجل تغيير هذه القوانين.
And the reason this person is going to the UN to speak there is as a result of some pressure by the human rights organizations to open up and to speak about what's going on there.
وفي إطار آخر وأطالب بعمل أي مجهود من أجل إنقاذ الأشخاص الموجودين الآن على الحدود الليبية التونسية أو على الأقل شخص منهم الذي تمكن من الخروج من جحيم السجن إنقاذه في أسرع وقت ممكن لأنه في أي لحظة يمكن للسلطات الليبية أن تستعيده.
In another aspect, I urge everyone to work urgently in order to free those people that are stranded between the borders of Libya and Tunisia, including this person that I have mentioned before, that have been in prison for a long time, so that they can find freedom somewhere.
كما أقترح على جميع المسلمين السابقين الذين اتهموا بالردة أو تم سجنهم في هذا الإطار المتواجدين في أوروبا إلى التواصل من أجل خلق صوت قوي لأن التفرقة وعدم التواصل فيما بينهم هذا لن يخدمهم نهائيا.
And I urge also the former Muslims in Europe to connect with each other, to try to have connection somehow with each other in order to create a pressure group on different organizations and governments in order to improve their situation.
لأنني دائما حين أتحدث مع بعض السياسيين الفرنسيين حول واقع الهاربين من الاضطهاد الديني من الدول الناطقة بالعربية في شمال أفريقيا والشرق الأوسط يحتجون علي بالقول نحن ليست لدينا جهة منظمة نتعامل معها، نحن لا يمكن أن نتعامل مع كل فرد على حدة.
Because whenever I have the opportunity to speak with some French politicians, I hear always the remarks that they have no one to talk to when it comes to the people that, or to the former Muslims that have been persecuted and left their countries and live in Europe. They say there is no organization that represents them. There is nobody that can talk in their name. So we have no way to contact them or to hear their stories.
وأعتقد أن توحيد جهودنا داخل أوروبا سيكون له دور كبير في تغيير القوانين في دولنا الأصلية.
And I think that unifying our efforts in Europe will have a strong impact on the countries from which we came.
لأن توحيد جهودنا سيشكل قوة حقيقية وأشكركم على هذه الاستضافة وأشكركم على هذه الفرصة وأنا سعيد بالتواجد معكم.
Because our united efforts will produce greater impact and will work much better. And I want to thank you for this opportunity and for listening to me.
We will be going to Godfrey, who he started the tape on in just a moment. I want to thank Cheick for his activism, despite the fact that he has suffered, and thank you for raising the plight of others that are continuing to suffer as well. We definitely appreciate your participation today. We were going to have a speaker now that was pre-recorded from a South Asian country, but due to the sake of time, we will cut that out of this program today. Instead, we're going to hear from Godfrey Yogarajah of the World Evangelical Alliance, who is going to talk about the context in Southeast Asia, and his remarks are pre-recorded.
I have been asked to speak today on the subject of anti-conversion laws and apostasy laws in South Asia. Now, within the limited time I have, I hope I can do justice to this topic. The right to freely choose and change one's religion is protected under international law. Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights also protects individuals from coercion that would impair their freedom to choose their religion or belief. The tension between the freedom to spread one's belief and the freedom of others not to be coerced is at the heart of an alarming majoritarian trend in South Asia. Professor Heiner Belafeld, the former United Nations Special Rapporteur on the freedom of religion or belief, has helpfully divided the right to conversion into 4 subcategories. Firstly, the right to convert. Second, the right not to be forced to convert. Third, the right to try to convert others by means of non-coercive persuasion. And finally, the right of the child and his or her parent in this regard. Over the last decade, governments across the South Asia region have taken legal measures to prohibit religious conversions from the dominant religious group. The motivation behind these laws is to preserve the status quo of the dominant religion and maintain the number of adherents so that the minority religion does not gain ground in the country. It's a matter of power play, since in South Asia, as you may be aware, religion is politicized and politics is religionized. The method of preventing conversions vary. For instance, in India, several states' legislations have adopted laws limiting conversions away from Hinduism. In Pakistan, national blasphemy laws are used to criminalize attempts by non-Muslims to convert Muslims. Now, if you look at the screen, you will see there are 9 states in India which have enacted legislation to prevent conversion. I will not go too much into it, as Ms. Tehmina from ADF will be dealing with this in detail. Now, none of these laws have been implemented against mass conversions to Hinduism. For instance, the World Hindu Council claims that it has converted 500,000 Christians and 250,000 Muslims to Hinduism, and yet no action has been taken in this regard. Now, if we take Nepal, in 2015 Constitution, Article 26 recognizes the right of every citizen to practice his or her faith. However, the same article prohibits any citizen from converting a person of one religion to another. The Constitution also provides special protection for conversion from religions that have been practiced since ancient times, which is understood as referring to Hinduism. Proselytization is also criminalized in Nepal's penal code. For instance, those convicted under the law could serve up to 5 years in prison and pay up to 50,000 Nepali rupees in fines. Now, how are anti-conversion laws used to penalize conversion? Also, does there exist an increase or decrease mob violence? The violent religious persecution cycle present in the religious economies theory points to a correlation between increased violence, resulting in increased social and state restrictions. In countries like Sri Lanka and Nepal, when conversions have happened, especially of notable people, there's a lot of instigation by even the media, including social media. And this has led to disinformation campaigns and mob violence against religious communities, especially minorities. Now, how do governments defend the introduction of these laws? By the titles of these bills itself, you can see that the government defend these bills by presenting it as a freedom of religion bill or as a religious harmony bill, and in order to safeguard conversion by coercion and fraudulent means, they would say. And an interesting point to note in light of Grimm and Fink's religious economies theory is Hertzberg's observation that anti-conversion laws are enacted to guarantee religious freedom. For instance, the Indian government acceded to ban unethical conversions owing to Hindu nationalist pressure based on the argument that such conversions attract violent opposition from Hindu nationalists and thereby threaten public order. In conclusion, any regulation or proselytization is bound to provoke intense debates. The most promising path to find a solution for the problematic issue is through elaborating the notion of coercion in forcible conversion. When we keep in mind how Hindu and Buddhist nationalists have already developed tools of exclusionary politics against religious minorities, anti-conversion legislations can be another powerful tool to regulate religious minorities in South Asia. Anti-conversion legislation points to the need for a more nuanced approach to understand the limits of proselytization. Thank you.
Thank you, Godfrey, for that excellent overview of the law of the matter. That definitely sets the context for what others on this panel have shared have happened to them, but also provides us with a good understanding. Our next speaker, Tehmina Aurora, she will be joining us from India. She is on the Zoom call, but it is a pre-recorded, wanting to ensure that we can provide her statement. Since there's sometimes technical issues, we had it pre-recorded, but she is with us on Zoom as well. So Tehmina can present now.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share about the anti-conversion laws in India. The Constitution of India protects religious freedom under Article 25 and states that subject to certain safeguards such as public order, health and morality, everyone has the freedom of conscience and the right to practice, profess and propagate the religion of their choice. This is a principle that India frequently likes to showcase. Here Muslims, Christians, Jews, Parsis and have made their home alongside Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and numerous other faith traditions. Yet in spite of this very rich heritage and intermingling for centuries, there's increased hostility and violence and, of course, government restrictions. As per human rights groups since 2014, India has witnessed a sharp increase in violence targeting religious minorities. In 2021, there have already been over 150 incidents and only 23 FIRs registered. And this is telling because in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic and strong lockdowns across the country, the hostility against religious minorities has continued unabated. And at the heart of this violence against religious minorities are allegations that they are engaged in forcible or fraudulent conversion. And in the recent years, 9 out of the 28 provinces in India now have laws that restrict or regulate religious conversions. The most recent amendments of these laws make them more stringent and have punishments ranging up to 10 years of imprisonment in some of the states. The laws even penalize the person converting, providing up to 3 years imprisonment for those who fail to declare their religious conversion to the local authorities. To give you an example, a group of believers, Christians in Jharkhand, recently filed an application before the district authorities asking for permission to change their religion. As per the law, they had to inform the district authorities prior to their religious conversion. The local administrator informed them that they had to declare who had converted them, what was the ceremony that is going to be performed. Their reply to the collector was that they had accepted the Christian faith after watching YouTube videos. Nobody had spoken to them directly about the Christian faith. They had only seen it on the internet and they had desired to convert their faith. Sadly, in spite of this back and forth with the collector, they have yet to get permission to change their religion. But provisions such as the UP, under the UP law, raise some very serious questions. When does a person believe? Can the state really regulate a religious conversion? Does it happen first in the minds and hearts of people, or is it only through a ceremony? And these provisions really highlight how the law fails to protect the very person these laws claim to be protecting, the person who wants to convert. They deny the agency of the person converting and always assume that somehow conversion is being done against to them against their will.
So thank you, Tehmina, for those excellent context for India. India has been continuing with the anti-conversion laws, as she shared, and that is creating significant problems for religious minority community. Our next speaker will actually be on a positive note, discussing the Sudan, which has repealed its apostasy law. It was just an amazing, sudden, in certain respects, sudden change in that country of Sudan last year in July. So we have with us to tell us what the repeal is currently meaning in Sudan. We have with us Kamal Fahmi of Set My People Free. He will be participating virtually by Zoom.
Welcome.
It is great to be with you and to listen to the pleas for abolishing these laws. I think abolishing apostasy and blasphemy law is basic for religious freedom. Without it, there is no religious freedom. And I think when Sudan abolished the apostasy law, Sudan endorsed Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because with having these laws, there is no application of Article 18, and without Article 18, there is no religious freedom. And so it is very basic for religious freedom to abolish apostasy law, because then you have the right to change your religion. You have the right to have freedom of thought, conscience, and belief. And the second thing, which is important, which happened to Sudan now with the abolishing of apostasy law, that it gives ex-Muslims the right to exist. As we heard from our brothers and sisters who shared earlier, that apostasy law deny the individual ex-Muslim from the right to exist when the apostasy law is applied. So now in Sudan, the ex-Muslim has the right to exist. He has his full civil right as an individual, as a citizen of the country. The Sudanese individual today is free to live in Sudan as an ex-Muslim. It gives freedom to the descendant of a Muslim father to choose their belief. So somebody like Mariam will have the freedom now to live as a non-Muslim, because descendants of Muslim parents, they don't have the right. They are automatically Muslims. They don't have the right to live Islam, even if they are adults. And the third thing, it gives women from Muslim background the freedom to marry non-Muslims, because according to the law now, a Muslim woman cannot marry a non-Muslim, the law before. But when you abolish apostasy law, when the apostasy law is abolished in Sudan, it gives the freedom for a woman from a Muslim background to marry a non-Muslim. The other things, it protects the convert or the ones who leave Islam from death sentence. You see, before, like Mahmoud Muhammad Taha was executed because he had a different sect. He had the Republican sect, and he was accused of apostasy, and he was executed in 1985. So this, when the apostasy law is abolished in Sudan today, it gives the freedom, the right for the person to exist, and it abolished the capital punishment. And actually the Republicans now, they started to meet again freely and practice their faith in Sudan. Even actually one of the Republicans who are part of this sect became the Minister of Education for some time. Now he has resigned not so long ago, but so they can meet, they can practice their faith now freely. The other thing, today you have the freedom not to believe in Prophet Muhammad. So before, if you say, I don't believe in Prophet Muhammad, you can be accused of blasphemy or be accused of apostasy if you are a Muslim. So today you have the right also to reject Sharia law. It is, before, if you reject Sharia law, it is considered a crime and you are accused of blasphemy and you may face death. So with abolishing apostasy law and also they takfir, people who, another individual, which is accusing somebody of blasphemy, it gives the freedom to, for example, if you don't like cutting of hand and you say cutting of hand is bad, you have the right, you can say that today without facing punishment. Also, it opens the door for proclamation and practice of other religions or beliefs or unbelief is not crime. Because before abolishing apostasy and blasphemy law, if you do proclaim your faith or try to lead others to your own faith or encourage people to be atheists, you face problem because even now in Algeria, people have been put in prison because they are accused of shaking the faith of Muslims. So actually, abolishing apostasy law and blasphemy law is very basic for the application of Article 18. With it, you cannot really have religious freedom. And again, it protects the individual from totalitarian regime of one party, which lead to tyrannical, oppressive, repressive, one-party kind of regime. And we have seen this with the testimony from Iran, from Mauritania. So it is really key. And we are very thankful for what has happened in Sudan. And I think the revolution which happened in 2019 was very key in bringing this because they were seeking three things. They were seeking freedom, they were seeking justice, and they were seeking peace. And so it was very crucial to abolish this law. And so we are very thankful that it happened. It is very, very crucial that it happened and that it was stopped. And actually, I was just in Sudan 2 weeks ago, and I met with the Minister of Justice, incredible person, Dr. Al-Bari, who is the Minister of Justice, and his stand for justice and freedom and for religious freedom is really encouraging. And he shared with us this. We sat for 3 hours and talked about different issues. And we thank him for what he has done. He's a courageous man and also a scholar in really. So here he shared with us this statement from Martin Luther King, because Dr. Martin Luther King, because many people say, oh, changing the laws does not help. But he said like this, he said this statement from Dr. Martin Luther. He said, morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. The judicial decrees may not change the heart, but they can restrain the heartless. So changing the laws are very key. And we thank the government, the civil government in Sudan in taking these steps to abolish these laws. And we really, we also ask other countries which are applying these laws to abolish it, as our friend from Mauritania has mentioned today many times, that they have death sentence in Mauritania, they have death sentence in Libya. And our hope, these laws will be abolished because these laws are taking away freedom for over 1.3 billion Muslims. They don't have the freedom to change belief. And the first step to give religious freedom is to help to change the laws, as Dr. Martin Luther King mentioned here, because it will restrain the heartless. And our friends from Muslim backgrounds, they face always the fear of death sentence, and these laws stand like a threat on their life and strip them from the right to live and exist as non-Muslims.
Thank you, Kamal. We appreciate your very thorough overview of the situation in Sudan. Now, we actually have like 2 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is run over until they throw us out of this room, since we are the last group today. And I would like for Ambassador Douma to provide us with his engagement on this issue, as he has been formerly an ambassador of the Netherlands to Iran, as well as currently Special Envoy for FORB and the chair of the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance. So we're very grateful he could be with us in person today. And so I want to turn over to Ambassador Douma for his remarks.
Yes, friends, a number of remarks on what has been said, and to put it into perspective, so to speak. And then I start with speakers that we had yesterday and this morning. Yesterday at the Open Doors luncheon, we had Metropolitan Hilarion from Russia. And this morning we had a Greek Orthodox bishop from America. And they were quarreling, so to speak, indirectly. And they were dealing with both politics and religion. And Godfrey made an important remark about politicization of religion and religionizing politics. And you might have missed those remarks, but they are extremely important, because that is very tempting for whatever politician and whatever clergyman. But there's another aspect of what of Hilarion being here. He also mentioned, Godfrey, proselytation, and it came back in Kamal's statement. The trick is, in Russia, it is forbidden to proselytize. So it is forbidden to tell others about your view on whatever God, but normally it is in this Christian country not allowed to convince people of your, for instance, Protestant or your Jehovah's Witness or whatever view. So please do not think that this issue is only playing in Muslim countries or in Hindu countries. It is amongst us. In fact, it is human, because I take that most of you have a strong belief. And if you have a strong belief, a strong religion, then you like to see others have that religion as well, and you don't like to see others leave that religion. But luckily, you can sort of convince yourself not to coerce the other to stay if the other wants to leave. But in many religions, it is almost necessary or common practice to prevent someone from leaving. And if someone leaves, you have to punish the person. Fill in which religion. Now Kamal, he depicted a very positive development in Sudan. Now, for us, it is very important that it started at grassroots level. We had civic society engaging against an oppressive government. So the government fell. We had a new government, and he sang praise to that government, especially to the justice minister, and he sang praise to new legislation. But what is still in society? You did not deal with that yet, Mariam, but most of your story was coercion from family, coercion from the village, from society. So how to get rid of that? By mere legislation. That's virtually impossible. So what we have to do is to convince societies by engaging us with civic society in the countries concerned. What Marziyeh depicted, I know very well. I never was in Evin prison or in that other prison that she told about, but I heard stories about it, and it is very serious. And my time in Iran was very depressing, because we even warned our superiors in Brussels and in capital cities not too often to claim with the Iranian government to set someone free or to not hang someone, because it happens on a daily basis, and we cannot go on a daily basis to the government. So imagine the plight of a diplomat there, convincing her authorities not to order too often to lobby with the Iranian government. It was an an almost impossible battle because they were not receptive. In the concept of the Islamic Republic of Iran, it is simply impossible to leave Islam. And Marziyeh gave a very convincing story about that. She told us a very sound example herself. So that's a very important story depicting a very particular situation in Iran. And in a previous occasion, I sounded even more pessimistic than I am now. We heard Cheick speaking about the situation in Mauritania. And Mauritania is a country almost unknown to all of us. But his story is familiar in a way. What did he do? He spoke up. So then you get a combination of apostasy and of blasphemy. And then we have a very serious issue, which is not only to be experienced in Mauritania. There are other countries, simply fill in, you know them. So what we heard today is a series of examples. And yeah, I regret to say only one solution. The situation in India is very serious. We recently received a report drafted by the London School of Economics, ordered by Open Doors, and I cannot comment on it because Parliament asked us questions about the report and we still have to answer them. But I already have contact with the Indian ambassador in The Hague because he told me his story, his view on his religious history, the religious history of India. And that is a combination of culture, a very old country, lots of experiences with different colonizations, and also with a very difficult religious system. He himself is not a Hindu, but another important religion in India. And he offers indeed to be confronted with the story of people like Open Doors and other organizations active in the Netherlands and from the Netherlands, and discuss with them the views on a situation in India, because this is another version of apostasy, conversion, the right not to convert or reconvert. And it was a very telling story in a number of states in India, and all blessed by the BJP, the governing party. So I cannot comment on it, but it is an important, a very telling story that both Godfrey and Tehmina told us. Then there is indeed a ray of hope. And this morning, I hope that you were all in the plenary this morning when Pak Yahya, the Secretary General of the Organization of Muslims in Indonesia, made his statement. And he did it in a very balanced way. And he told us about a discussion, sort of a covenant he had made with the Evangelical Alliance. And he spoke about, oh no, I forgot the word. It sounded like the situation we had with the Soviet Union in the Cold War, mutual respect, peaceful coexistence. That it was peaceful coexistence. That sounded a bit alarming. You, as two blocks, a Christian bloc and a Muslim bloc, you live next to each other. But the way he told us about it, and also his explanation later when he came back in the speaker's room, it was very positive. That he accepted as a leader of Muslims that it is the individual's choice, and that the individual has this right to choose. Not only, very interestingly, because of, let's say, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but simply because of the existence of Indonesia. Pancasila, the sort of a treaty for the major religions to live together in peace, is essential for stability in Indonesia. So they accept demographic changes, and that means also religious changes. And the number of Christians has grown tremendously in Indonesia. And he as a sort of a joke, said, how could we decapitate so many millions of Christians retroactively, since they all converse to Christianity? Of course, as a Muslim, he did not say that, but of course, as a Muslim, he will not like it that people leave Islam, but he accepts it as a reality necessary for coexistence in that giant Republic of Indonesia. And that indeed is a ray of hope. And let us hope and pray that this type of leaders lead others to such tolerance. But never forget that intolerance is in ourselves. So show it yourself as well in your daily practice, and never coerce people to see it your way. We as diplomats, we play it, let's say, at another level. Cheick referred to the United Nations, and that is where we usually have these discussions. That is very difficult. My colleague over there and I, we discussed with colleagues both in The Hague and in New York, resolutions on religious dialogue and the like. And often I am terribly irritated because these resolutions are like a wet blanket. Dialogue sometimes means simply freezing the situation and not freeing the person and not giving you the freedom to choose. So we want dialogue, but we do not want wet blankets that suffocate us. That's one. Secondly, we have the Human Rights Council. Cheick referred, I think, to Mauritania having been called to Geneva for a universal periodic review. And that is very important, that questions are asked. How in your country do you deal with, in this case, apostasy? And that's what we do. We check whenever we can, what is the situation in such a country, and shouldn't we ask a question? We shouldn't ask too many questions, because then there is no answer. It's as simple as that. But we should answer questions on essential elements of personal freedom, of human rights. And this is one. So we play it at the international level, the multilateral level. And in March, Australia floored a statement accepted by more than 50 countries calling for the abolition of death penalty and on apostasy and blasphemy. And that merely is a beginning. And we should follow that up, because this is only the death penalty. And Marziyeh, she faced death penalty, but she was in prison. So it is not only the death penalty, it is also imprisonment. It is punishing your own personal individual choice. And we work closely together with the United Nations Special Rapporteur, Ahmed Shahid, who may be by origin a Muslim, Mariam, but who is really neutral in his approach and objective in his approach. And he tries to convince countries by visiting them to change their legislation. And we together as international community and you as civic organizations should address these issues with civic society in the countries concerned as much as you can do. Because never forget, Cheick referred to one colleague having been freed thanks to pressure from a human rights organization. So it is not only states, it is not only politicians, but it is also you and organizations who can do it. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Ambassador. We are very grateful for you to have given us that overview with action points that we can follow. And we are very grateful to Australia and the Netherlands for the lead that you've taken. And there is one resolution that we hope is a wet blanket on apostasy laws, and that is one that both. Here we go.
Well,
so there's one resolution here in the United States in the House of Representatives and one in the Senate. And so these are very short clips, and we will end with these two clips, one from Representative Raskin and the other from Senator Lankford.
Hi, it's Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland's beautiful 8th District, and I'm just greeting all my friends in the Jubilee campaign at the IRF Summit who are working so hard to defend religious freedom and religious liberty and equality around the world. As a member of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission in Congress and as a champion of people's civil rights and civil liberties, I'm very appreciative of all of the great work that you guys are doing. We know that global restrictions on freedom of belief and expression are on the rise with the anti-Semitism and the racism and the authoritarianism around the world. And we've seen a resurgence in the use of these very restrictive anti-blasphemy laws, anti-heresy laws, anti-apostasy laws, anti-sorcery laws, all of these repressive statutes are used to demonize and vilify religious minorities and to persecute them. So the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom designated 14 countries as countries of particular concern due to severe suppression of religious freedom, and 12 more are on a special watch list. And it's very scary to see the things that have happened to people, including forced disappearance, detainment, imprisonment, house arrest, and of course, people have been executed for their alleged religious heresy or apostasy. It's going to be a really critical test of the progress of our enlightenment as a civilization, whether we can get rid of these laws, which are such a temptation and such a danger for authoritarian governments around the world as they use them to persecute and harass people. So I applaud the work that the Jubilee campaign is doing, and I look forward to working with you to ensure a global end to religious-based persecution. Thanks so much.
It's great to be able to visit with you today. I'm James Lankford, United States Senator from the state of Oklahoma. The United States has this core value. It's a core value we've had from the very founding of our nation. It is the rights of individuals to be able to have the faith of their choosing, live that faith, change that faith, or have no faith at all, and still be a welcome part of our society. In fact, in the earliest days of the founding of our country, there was wide belief around the world that this would never work, that the only way to be able to make a country strong and secure and stable is if every individual had the same faith as the leaders or had the non-faith of the leaders, that citizens had to be able to share what their government believed. We found as a nation that we have thrived as a country in great diversity of belief and of faith. And not only has it brought out what's great about our country, it's a value that we need to export, and many other countries around the world have taken that on over the past 2 centuries. It's a basic truth. Humans own their own faith. Government shouldn't be able to take that over or to be able to dictate to individuals basic human rights and their own most personal, private possession, their faith. People should be free to thrive and to be able to live the faith of their choosing, change their faith, or to have no faith at all, and be widely accepted by their own nation. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, USCIRF, that group started researching out how many countries around the world had laws on apostasy or blasphemy. They found 84 countries around the world that had these restrictive laws in place. Only 41 of them actually enforce those laws, but even at 41 countries, there are 41 countries that are enforcing laws, putting people in prison because they changed their faith, have the wrong faith. We've got to be able to press back against that. We should be, as free people, people that stand up and protect the rights of others to be able to live out their faith or to have no faith or change their faith. So we continue to be able to speak to these issues. And for all of you that continue to be able to speak out on the world stage, thank you for doing that. Senator Chris Coons, my colleague from Delaware, he and I in 2019 put together a Senate resolution to condemn blasphemy laws anywhere where they exist in the world. I'm proud to be able to tell you that passed unanimously in the United States Senate. We're speaking out here. We're finding practical ways to be able to do that. We encourage you to be able to do the same. But at the same time, it's not ended. Though the Senate has spoken on this in a unanimous way, and though many of you continue to be able to speak on it, it's important that we continue to be able to train, encourage, and challenge people around the world in their own nations to be able to live differently. That's why just 2 months ago, I wrote a letter to President Joe Biden saying it's time that we get our ambassador at large for international religious freedom in place. That position's not been filled yet, but we continue to be able to press to say this person's important. During the Trump administration, Senator Brownback, who became Ambassador Brownback, was a key player on the world stage, promoting international religious liberty and putting down blasphemy and apostasy. We need to continue to be able to speak out as a nation, as we will. But I'm grateful to all of you that are also speaking out as we all serve together to be able to protect this most basic human right and dignity, the right to be able to live your faith, choose your faith, change your faith, or to have no faith and still be accepted in your country. God bless you. I look forward to the ongoing dialogue in the days ahead.
With that, we are out of time. Thank you all very much for joining us, and please, if you have questions, we can individually meet with you afterwards. Have a great evening.